Hey everyone. So, remember how I ended the last video saying I'd knock out a few solid scenes to rebuild some motivation, so that eventually I could come back to the hair with fresh energy? Yeah, well, that plan lasted about 1.5 hours. I wish I was joking, but instead of working on the scenes, my brain latched onto the hair issue again and just refused to let go. I kept circling the same thought. I still haven't nailed the look I want. It was eating away at me, and I couldn't focus on anything else, so yeah, I ended up finishing the hair. No seam work, and then I went ahead and started reworking the character's clothes too. Classic. Before I tackled the hair again, I spent a lot of time just thinking about the style. In the last video, I mentioned not knowing exactly what kind of stylized I was aiming for. That hadn't changed, so I decided to do a bit of style exploration, but off camera. Recording myself while working sometimes makes me feel like I have to be productive every second, even though I can pause the recording or cut stuff later. But still, there's this weird mental pressure when OBS is running, so I gave myself some breathing room. I built a quick test scene using Quixel Megascans, just Kitbash style, and then I retextured those assets in Substance Painter to make them feel more handcrafted, less photoreal, more stylized. I also pulled in some foliage assets I already had to see how they'd sit in the environment. With that, I tried 3 different visual setups. A pure cel-shaded look with no 3D lighting at all, which looked kinda meh. A cel-shaded with 3D lighting. This one really popped, strong silhouettes, readable shapes. And I also did a version of the second setup with a Kuwahara filter on top. It gave things a soft painterly feel, but it killed a lot of clarity, especially in details and silhouettes. So I picked the middle ground, cel-shading plus real lighting. It gave me enough stylization without sacrificing readability. During that, I also stumbled into a neat little trick for making clouds. Basically reusing my tree leaf setup with some tweaks. I made a quick breakdown shot for that if you're interested. I'll link it in the description or pop it in the corner if you want to check it out. Now that I had a clearer sense of the project's visual direction, I looked again at Lenya's hair. The metahuman base I'm using is still pretty realistic, which makes style matching a bit tricky, but I decided to lean into a shape-heavy, less detailed look. I'd already started a hairstyle using the profiled curve method in Blender, which I talked about the last time. But this time, I wanted to take it a step further, make the hair responsive to motion. Why? Because animating every little strand by hand is a no-go. I'm one person after all, and I want to eventually release something. So I gave that Blender stylized hair plugin another shot. Instead of using round profiles for the strands, I went with a flat oval shape because I liked the look of that better. And that's where trouble started. When I placed a strand, the root rotation was often wrong, and Blender's grooming tools don't let you tilt or rotate hair curves, so I came up with a workaround. I copied my strand profile and created multiple versions, rotated 90 degrees, 45 degrees, mirrored, clockwise, counterclockwise, and so on. This way I had a little library of orientation presets. Then, whenever I placed a strand and the angle was off, I started a new hair section with a new rotation, or just picked the fitting one I already had. It was a slower process, but I think it was worth it. I built the hair in chunks, working bottom up and constantly referencing the rough hairstyle I'd done previously. I ended up doing the whole thing in one sitting, around 5 hours straight. Not ideal health-wise. Seriously, take your breaks. But it felt amazing, like mental weight had been lifted. And big bonus of this approach, I could reuse the hair material I already had, which gave me transparency at the tips, kind of mimicking the hair cards, but fully 3D. Big win. Then came the next big pain, transferring everything to Unreal. Step 1 was enabling the grooming import plugin, which isn't on by default. Might have took me a while to realize. Once that was sorted, I found out Unreal doesn't support the profiled curves as groom assets, so I needed a plan B. I duplicated my hair objects, and since they basically were still hair curves, I deleted the geometry nodes added by the plugin and instead used Blender's native duplicate hair curves and added a clump on top. This way I could mimic the shape I had with the profiled curves and still get them as groom into Unreal. I exported 2 versions, one as Alembic for grooming and one as FBX. The plugin curves I duplicated again and turned into a mesh. The Alembic version imported smoothly, minus a quick re-import to fix the rotation, and I was able to assign a groom material. But when I saw it in engine, I just stared at it for a bit and nope. It looked bad. Weird and some parts bold, and not at all what I had imagined. Now I had a mesh version sitting there, already UV unwrapped by the plugin. It looked good shape-wise, I couldn't use it as groom though. And I started thinking, how can I make it move? Rigging every strand by hand would be hell, but Chaos Cloth? That seemed manageable. I weight painted the mesh in Blender, since Unreal's weight painting tools feel clunky to me. It took me a few tries to get it right, but here's how I approached it. I left the roots black so they wouldn't move at all. Then I painted gradients towards the tips for bounce and sway. I did all of that in distinct zones, like braids versus back of neck hair, so they'd move differently, based on where they are. I exported that as an FBX with vertex colors enabled, then imported it into Unreal as the static mesh. From there I created a skeletal mesh, and after its physics asset. I opened the skeletal mesh by double-clicking and selected the hair parts and created their clothing data. After I selected the mask and used copy from vertex color, I kept the default color channel and cranked up the scaling to 100 to correct Blender to Unreal scale mismatch. Then I hit a weird snag. I needed an animation to test the cloth movement, so I did a quick retargeting setup. And then I spent about an hour trying to figure out how to attach the hair to my metahuman. I thought I needed to fully rig it, manually setting up the blueprints, all that jazz. Nope. Turns out, even though the slot button is grayed out, you can click the little folder icon next to it, choose a socket and boom, attached. I felt like an idiot, but hey, now I know. When testing the Chaos Curve setup with an animation, I noticed that Unreal automatically added this capsule collider to the hair inside the physics asset. It looked hilarious to say the least, like a little mohawk. I deleted it and went back to the skeletal mesh. I'd completely missed the cloth config section before. That's why the hair was looking like a soggy poodle after. Once I adjusted the values though, especially anim drive stiffness and damping, I set both between 0.75 and 1.0. The hair kept its shape and had a slight bounce. Not a ton of motion, but a good start to build upon in the future. With the hair working for now, I started remodeling Lenya's clothes, but I'll save that for the next video. This one's long enough already. So yeah, once again, I completely deviated my original plan, but I got a major blocker out of the way. The hairstyle is finally in a place I'm happy with. It's stylized, reactive, and fits the evolving art direction of the project more. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you're on a solo project too, don't beat yourself up when the path gets messy. That is the process. If you want to follow along, subscribe and hit the bell. The short I mentioned is in the description below. And if you want to support this whole chaotic animation endeavor, check out my socials or Patreon. You can also commission me through Fiverr to get a custom background for your project, like the one you can check out in this video. Catch you in the next one. Take care. And don't forget to take breaks.